and welcome to this TR Sustainability Roundtable. My name is Charlotte Turner. I am the Editorial Director for TRBusiness, and I am joined today by my colleague, Michael Barrett, who is Head of CSR and Events. We will be co-hosting this session today. So, why have you all gathered virtually here today? Well, as many of you may be aware, in 2019, TRBusiness launched two pioneering initiatives to help the duty-free and travel retail industry combat and reduce its impacts on the environment, including plastic pollution. And these were the TR Plastic Pledge and the TR Sustainability Forum. So, as well as intensifying and broadening our editorial coverage on all topics related to CSR, with a dedicated section on our website, our webinars, our video interviews, our e-zine, and in dedicated newsletters, we then went on to launch TR Sustainability Week in 2021. This is the only virtual event for travel retail dedicated solely to sustainability. Now, to coincide with this inaugural event, we also developed another industry-first recognition program, the TR Sustainability Pitch, rewarding sustainable products and initiatives associated with the global travel retail industry. In a further evolution of the pitch, this roundtable format was born, and today we're offering up the TRBusiness platform to industry stakeholders, where they will not only showcase their sustainable investments and products, but will discuss these with representatives from an airport, retailer, and airline concessionaire and catering company in what we believe will be an informative and engaging conversation. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yes, hello, everybody. Yeah, to say a few more words about today's roundtable, we wanted to give our partners across all categories within travel retail the opportunity to not only showcase their sustainable initiatives to the industry, but openly discuss these with business partners. So the legitimacy and the depth of their sustainable investments are better understood by them, the panelists, and indeed by you or the viewers. And so we're delighted to welcome to today's TR Sustainability Roundtable, Abu Dhabi Airports, ARI Middle East, Gluck, gateretail, and Walkers. And our panelists will introduce themselves in just a few moments. And we look forward to an interesting discussion between all these panelists. You're going to discover the initiatives through two very short videos we'll introduce in a few moments, which our panelists have all had the opportunity to review, of course, prior to this roundtable. And before we ask our panelists to introduce themselves, I'd just like to add that we welcome all companies to submit their own sustainable initiatives so we can showcase and review in future roundtables, as well as during the TR Sustainability Week event, the third edition of which will take place in September 2023. And of course, the TR Consumer Forum in June, where sustainability will once again be one of the themes we'll be discussing in very much depth. Charlotte, back to you.
So it's this point I would like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. So I'd like to go to Zoe first, if I may.
Hi, I'm Zoe Farmer. I'm the Global Director of Retail Management for gateretail, and I look after all of our Buy on Board programs throughout the whole of the globe. I'm delighted to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Zoe. And now on to Francois.
Hello, I'm Francois Bourienne. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Abu Dhabi Airports, and I'm delighted to be part of this very important panel.
And now I'd like to turn it to Rob, if I may.
I'm Robertaccio. I'm Senior Vice President of Global and Travel Retail Sales at Gluck Corporation. I'm very excited to have been asked to be here today to talk about our Anne Klein Ocean Plastic product.
Now on to Sarah.
Hello, Charlotte, and hello, Michael, and hello to the rest of you. Great to meet you online. My name is Sarah Macaulay, and I work for Walkers. As you probably know, we make shortbread and lots of other bakery goods. And we're very excited to be here today to share with you some of the initiatives that we've been working on, and indeed some of the plans for the future as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Tracy?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Tracy Ross from ARI International Middle East. I am Project and Design Manager for the past 18 years, also the Sustainability Champion for ARI Middle East, and also a Lead Green Associate. And delighted to be invited back onto today's session. It's always a great honor. Thank you very much.
And finally, Bryony, please.
Hello, I'm Bryony Walker. I'm Head of Commercial Strategy at Walker's, a colleague of Sarah's, and I'm also part of the 4th generation of the Walker family that have owned and run Walker's Shortbread for the last 124 and a half years.
Great, thank you very much, all of you. And now we will introduce our 2 videos to show today. So we have one from Walker's to begin with, and then one from Gluck. So hope you enjoy our introductory videos.
True sustainability has always been at the heart of our business, like the wonderful environment around us 125 years later.
Situated on the banks of the revered River Spee, home to a wide range of plants and wildlife, we value water as a precious resource. As one of the largest employers in a small rural area, our family has a deep social responsibility and mutual interdependency with both our local community and the environment.
One of the achievements we're most proud of recently is the reduction of almost 50% of plastics in our global travel retail range. By 2025, we aim to have all the plastics we use on site to be either reusable, recyclable, or compostable.
Across the entire global travel retail range, investment into paper skillets and packaging has reduced plastic significantly, but this is just the beginning. We're working closely with partners to reduce this even further. We're investing in new technologies and innovations. We're supporting our suppliers on their own sustainability journeys and discovering new solutions and sharing with other businesses for the greater good.
95% of our waste is recyclable. No food waste is sent to landfill. It's all recyclable as animal feed. Fat is processed for use as agricultural fertilizer.
Minimising and managing food waste has always been of great importance to Walkers.
We're not just about making shortbread. What we're selling is a part of Scotland's heritage. We're proud of what we've achieved so far, which will help to promote and protect Scotland at its finest for generations to come.
Plastic pollution has become one of the most pressing environmental issues, as over 8 million tons of plastic flow into the ocean each year. That's the equivalent of setting 5 garbage bags full of trash on every foot of coastline around the world. Scientists estimate that by 2050, there will be more plastic in our oceans than fish. To help stem the pollution problem, we have teamed up with OceanWorks to turn plastic waste into new recycled material used in this collection. Not only are these recycled materials sustainable, but they're also more highly valued. 66% of people say they're willing to pay more for products from companies committed to positive social and environmental impact.
Okay, and now we've seen those wonderful videos. I'd just like to turn to our suppliers today, just to let them introduce a little bit more about their initiatives and investments. If I could come to you, Rob, first, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Charlotte. Today, we're really here to focus on our Anne Klein Ocean plastic watches. We've been fortunate to try some other initiatives in the market, but this is the one that has seemed to resonate the most with the consumer to date, and seems to be having the most trajectory and growth.
Thanks, Rob. And also now for Sarah and Bryony, your opportunity to say a few words about the video that we've just seen.
I might start because I think from the video you'll have seen Bryony talk through some of our sustainability initiatives. I think it's clear from what you've seen that at Walkers it is kind of a family objective and a company objective to make sure that we're putting the right things in place on our sustainability journey. We have looked at how we develop plastic savings across all of our packaging ranges, but specifically across our global travel retail range, and again across all of our kind of production and sites. We look at ways to improve our sustainability kind of objectives, whether that be on water use and how we use energy and those kind of savings that we can make.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think what we're super excited about with the GTR range has been an opportunity for us to start with from the MPD process to implement some of the things that we have been looking at from a sustainability perspective in terms of packaging and embed them right from the very beginning of the process. So this is for us has been a great way of launching a range that really builds those into it, but also we would then look, and we can talk about that more later, but how we embed those in the rest of our business as well, which is the opportunity, I suppose.
Great, thank you for that.
Maybe we could just have some initial reaction from Francois, Tracy and Zoe about the two videos that they've seen. Should we start with you, Tracy?
Sure, Michael. So congratulations on the submission, which was really a fabulous video, and I think very clear on your environmental sustainability issues, your clean green energy, your processes, your monitoring of your water. The story was really very, very clear. So for me, my question was more on, so from a retail perspective, on your packaging, because customers are obviously very aware and conscious of packaging, and good to see that you're shifting away from plastic and into recycled paper. On your ingredients list, and I did try and have a look on your website, do you indicate clearly your roundtable on sustainable palm oil and other ingredient achievement stamps? Are those clearly displayed on your GTR packaging?
I think I'll take that answer first of all. We don't necessarily pull out those elements within the ingredients list. One of the things we do an initiative that we've started is that we use a QR code, and within that the information that's sometimes through space on back of pack or available space to detail information. We have one, our sustainability information, two, our ingredients list, three, kind of our nutritional information, and four, brand information contained there. And we write there about our commitment to using sustainable palm oil. So that's something that we're kind of proud of and that we've definitely worked, absolutely, it's kind of a key element that we work to. So we have that held within the QR code and bit of information. We don't necessarily pull it out in the ingredients list, but it is absolutely there, and it's a tenet that we work to.
Okay, that's fabulous. That's good to know. Thank you. Thank you.
I think, Francois, you had a question connected with the production process as well.
Yes, I do. Historically, plastic was introduced to improve the quality or the shelf life of the products. So my question is around those moving away from the plastic is impacting the quality of the product or the shelf life of the shortbread.
So I'll jump in and start this one off. I mean, sure, Sarah can build on it. One of our core product principles is around quality, and exactly to your point, Francois, we take it very seriously, and we want to make sure that our product reaches the consumer in the best possible condition, but we also want to build in the sustainability into our packaging choices. So at the moment, we've reduced our plastic as much as possible on the overall GTR range. There's the one bit of plastic that still remains on our packaging is the primary seal around the shortbread, which is plastic. So that's a plastic film. We ensure that it's recyclable. So as a bare minimum, it has to be recyclable to be in there. And we have reduced the thickness of that and any the amount that we use in the product as much as possible to reduce the overall quantity that we do use. We are in the process of exploring other options that could replace that plastic. So a paper option that could replace that plastic without compromising product quality. So it's particularly important that the seal is very strong and secure on the basis that our product travels all over the world, and ultimately consumer quality is the most important thing for us. So that's the one bit, to your point, that we find very difficult to remove. It's not as simple as saying let's remove it in its entirety because the product quality depends on it, but we're in the very in the process of exploring all the other options we might have for doing that. So we've removed all the other plastic, basically.
Thanks. It's great to hear that you don't leave any stone unturned.
What's amazing is actually the amount of tonnage of plastic that you can reduce just through reducing the thickness of that gauge, the film gauge. So on one of our products alone, and this is, I don't know off the top of my head, but we estimated it could reduce it by 70 tons in a year just by changing that gauge ever so slightly. So we literally will change it by a minuscule amount that would not be visible to a consumer, and it maintains product quality. But we're looking at those tiny things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Zoe, I think you had a question for Sarah and Bryony as well.
Absolutely. So I loved your video. I thought it was wonderful. I love seeing the rivers and the streams of the area that you're producing in. And I would love to learn a little bit more about, with regards to your water. You talk about water and how you're monitoring it, but within your actual production, how are you reducing the amount of water that you use within your production?
I'll maybe start on that, and Bryony can jump in. From I suppose a technical or operational perspective, the baking of shortbread, which is what we're known most for, uses very little water. And within the kind of clean down process, which would be the biggest use of water, we don't use water for coolants, for example. It's more, white clean, how we develop those elements. So we're careful or judicial in the use of our water to begin with, and then where we are using it, there's that sense of understanding, well, how much are we using, and then we don't kind of increase above that. So quite common sense approaches, but I think in a sense common sense is how you kind of develop out from sustainability and how you manage that. The other part Bryony spoke in her introduction about being, in Aberlour, in this lovely part of Scotland for over, almost 125 years. So being respectful of and aware of the environment that we're in and what it gives to us and we give to it is hugely important. And that sense of kind of polluting on the doorstep would absolutely be something that, one, we'd be terribly embarrassed about, and two, we would be kind of mitigating against any of that. So the principles that we have in place are more around what are those common sense elements around water, how we kind of constantly, and I think there's this sense of kind of reviewing and what those reviews are, and almost trying to kind of get better, whether it be kind of quarter on quarter on how we look at those elements.
Thank you. That's really good to learn about.
Just to build on that, I think a lot of it is things like very simple elements like timers and auto taps and stuff, but what's been something that we've evolved as we've moved through building new sites or building new factories. Again, we've tried to build that in. So as we have different ages of factories as we've built new sites, and when we do build, we would take that into consideration in the very early stages, so to make sure that it's the most economical use in our toilets, in our hand wash stations, all that kind of thing. And it's the peripheral use of water actually that probably is the primary use for us. So it's those small things make a really big difference in that case.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah and Bryony. While we're on the whole production process, Rob, we put you on the hot seat now, and I think Francois, if you want to kick off with the questions to Rob, and again, if you want to give your overall impression and view of the video that you saw, that'd be great.
No, thanks for the video, Rob. I think it's a great product. Plastic in the sea is important topic for everyone, but even more for the younger generation. I can see how my son is reacting on it. So I think your product will be appealing more and more to the new customers. My question is around the percentage of recycled materials. So I understand you are using, you're recycling the plastic, but are you also recycling the rest of the materials you are using to manufacture the watch, or it's only the plastic? And if you don't use recycled materials for the rest, would you be able to target 100% of recycled materials in due course?
So in this product, 100% of the watch is not made from recycled plastic. There's restrictions, obviously, as to trying to make a jewelry item like a watch. There's many components that go into it. We found, as we've tested a lot of other products to incorporate into our watches, that the ocean plastic at this point, the way it takes color, the way it works integrated with metal components of a watch, has a very nice aesthetic that's been appealing to the customer. You know, one of the challenges when you're doing a fashion watch piece, again, is look. You can make something as sustainable as you want, but if it's not desirable or appealing to look at it, no one's going to be attracted to it to buy it. So there are definitely those challenges. One of the things that we did incorporate, because 100% benchmark would be nearly impossible for something like this. You know, we do what we can based on the supply chain that we have available to us of materials. But one of the things that we did put into this collection, which is a subset of a larger category of product for us called Anne Klein Consider It. We have a range of product that incorporates sustainable materials. This ocean plastic piece is the one that's resonated the best so far with the consumer. But to that end, the one thing that every watch does incorporate in this collection is a solar movement in it. So it's powered by light, eliminating the need for constant battery replacement. The lifespan of that watch without having to change the battery goes on for at least 10 years and longer before you would have to do anything with it, as to where a typical quartz watch, you're changing a battery and having to dispose of that battery every 2 years or so.
That's great to hear that you go beyond the plastic as well.
And Zoe, I think you had a couple of questions for Rob on the production process.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved your video. I thought it was super interesting. I think sometimes people don't realize actually the issue with the ocean until you actually see it with your own eyes. I remember seeing it prior to COVID, went on holiday, and I was shocked, you know, actually how bad it really is out there. So it's fantastic that the initiatives that you're doing. So what I wanted to learn a little bit more about is what type of ocean plastic are you using, and what recycled materials are you then using when you put it within the box and you put it on your display cabinets as well?
Sure. So to get down to the bits of the material is a little bit hard to explain itself. We don't actually collect this plastic ourselves. We have this project through a company called Ocean Works, which sources all of these plastic materials. They're the largest marketplace for sustainable materials that we've been able to find. In regard to the packaging itself, we don't have a specific display for the ocean plastic product. Again, Anne Klein is a large collection of, in some cases, 250 models, of which our Consider It and our ocean plastic collections are subsets of that. So quite often they're merchandised within a showcase with other product. A lot of times they're not in a box, so we don't really have specific display materials. We do the best we can to call out the messaging. In regard to the box itself, however, it is made from 80% post-consumer waste materials, and it's wrapped in 100% recycled paper. So that's the closest we've been able to get at this point to something that works, wide range. Again, challenges in our industry, it all comes down to production capacity and quantity. And when you're starting with something small, you're limited as to how much you can do in the fashion category in order to, I'm sure we'll talk about price and what have you later, but there's obviously metrics to what we have to be able to meet to compete and still make this product appealing for the consumer that our brands are positioned for.
Thank you. That's really good to learn about it. And when you're actually producing the product, How are you ensuring that the method that you're using of production is also as sustainable as possible, as well as obviously the product that you're producing?
Sure. So, as mentioned previously, we source this product through OceanWorks, and OceanWorks has its own, they have a tracing and tracking component to their products that the vendors, us that buy the product from them, can actually go and trace and see where that product's been to check up and follow up on those materials. So it's really kind of, in this case, because of where we source it from, it really comes down to us working with who we think is the best player that can guarantee us that information. Again, it's a component situation where we're not in 100% control. We have to go out and source a lot of things from other people as to be able to actually make the physical component ourselves.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Zoe, for those questions. It's really interesting how normally we perhaps wouldn't get to have these conversations sort of in a public forum, and there is some extraordinary detail that we're getting into here, which I think is really valuable for the discussion. Rob, you actually highlighted cost and price, and I think that's kind of the next topic of discussion. I think we're going to head back to Bryony and Sarah. Tracy, I think you had another question for them.
So yes, cost and price in relation to your production process, and I just wondered with the installation of your clean green energy and your monitoring systems and your e-vehicles and your zero waste to landfill policy, what has been the impact on the product, and either in a positive or a negative way, and is that an additional cost that you as a company have absorbed, or is it passed on to the consumer? What is the impact of the process been?
I'll start this one, and I'm sure Sarah can jump in. I think it varies massively. I think on one hand there are elements that cost us a lot of money, and then on the other hand there are also savings there, which is fantastic too. I think some of the principles you're talking around more around the site from a point of view of water or lighting and things like that. So we implemented very simple stuff like LED lighting, and obviously in production sites there is a lot of lighting in there. They're enormous sites, and we're very far north in Scotland, so in the winter you need lighting from first thing in the morning till last thing at night because it's dark a lot of the time. So we implemented LED lighting, which has reduced the overall costs because it uses less energy, but obviously the implementation has an expense attached as well. A lot of the monitoring elements that you're talking about, they may have cost savings, but ultimately the upfront investment it can offset them to an extent. So I would say that typically we would say we're probably investing as a business more than not. So we have other initiatives around things like we put on staff buses, and that's a sustainable initiative, but that is at our cost, obviously. So I'd say there are elements that balance out. We have generally borne that as a business in terms of we absolutely look to invest in that because we've believed it's the right thing. And we wanted to do it as a family, as a board, as a business to implement that. And we see that as very important. I'd say when it comes into the packaging, and Sarah might want to build on this, is we typically see that sustainable packaging options are more expensive than what we have been using. And again, when we're running high volumes, a lot of our equipment is based around packaging options that have been available for a long time, so plastic skillets, or they're set up around that. So, there's a lot of sunk cost, and there's also the availability of the more sustainable options is lower. And because the demand is only just starting to come through, again, the costs tend to be higher per unit. So we've actively taken the margin impact of investing in the right sustainable options. So for example, in the GTR range, we have a tube of biscuits that is fully recyclable. Now there's a tube option that is cheaper, significantly cheaper, that has a metal bottom and a paper body, but the fact that they're joined together makes that unrecyclable. And we actively wanted to ensure that they're definitely, each component part is recyclable in its own right. And again, where there is plastic, it's removable and it can be destroyed separately so that we don't have contamination. So that was really important to us, and we've actively invested in making sure that that is at the core of our product. Don't know if you want to build any more on that, Sarah.
No, I think you've done that very eloquently, Bryony. There's the sense of doing the right thing, or being on the journey of doing the right thing. And I think we spoke earlier about sometimes it is tough and sometimes these are difficult decisions, but it's about making sure that almost in a way, if we don't take the action, there will be, you know, government action, there will be legislation. There's a sense of these things will only get tougher and tougher. So I think that sense of wanting to do the right thing, and certainly the business values and the family values being translated there. And as Bryony says, we have borne that, we have kind of taken that. Now there are kind of ways to manage some of those elements, and we've tried those as well, but there is a sense that kind of sustainability costs unless everyone is joined up doing the right things. You know, the more people that will buy sustainable packaging and work with suppliers that do that, then, you know, kind of, you know, bringing economics into it, that becomes more viable across the board. So there's a sense of, you know, we're on this journey and we're developing, but we need every company to be doing the same thing, so that those material advances and then those kind of economic value around the buying of the sustainable and the right materials becomes more efficient for everyone.
I think what has definitely made it easier for us as a business, or just generally in the past, has been as a family of owned and run business, we take a very long-term approach. So the assumption of the family is this is going to be going in 30, it might be your children or your grandchildren. So I think that does help, because the board is willing to invest in a way that potentially a public business would not want to invest profit behind stuff. So I think that definitely helps. If you believe that it's going to be your children and grandchildren down the line, you look at stuff with a much longer term vision than somebody looking for profits next year or in the kind of 3-year time span. So that's definitely helpful, and it feels much more personal. It feels like a personal choice rather than a profit choice, effectively.
I think that answers the question very, very clearly, and I think your investments that you've done into your buildings and your processes are very genuine, and you can see you're in it for the long haul. But as you say, it does help because you're a family business, and that is so much easier to do when you're family and you're in it for the long. But great initiatives, and I think you've set very high standards and very good examples for others in the industry to follow. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Tracy. I think again we'll actually flip over to Rob now. That I think you had a similar question for as well.
Yeah, so Rob, same thing on the cost, and it's great to see the use of ocean plastic in your product. It's something that's personally very close to my heart, and you know, we're trying to eliminate plastic on one issue, but there is obviously this recognition that there is still all this plastic in circulation. So it was great to see you teaming up with Ocean Works. And again, the question is that using recycled material in your ankline straps, what has the impact been on cost, either positive or negative?
Cost is definitely, I mean, it's a negative cost. It's a positive from the perspective of it's more money, it's plus. But it typically, the materials end up costing us 20 to 30% more whenever we incorporate them. And that's without making a watch entirely that's sustainable. Again, I don't think I would be able to. There is no way to be able to do that as of now. And if we were, then you can take that and run that up exponentially. So you can see that there's clearly an increased cost to be able to offer this and then be able to hit a specific price point. We've tried to be really conscious of where we place our retails, from the perspective of even saying that when we originally had shown our collection, the first collection of ocean plastic watches, our retails were about $15 higher. And when we went and again took a look at it amongst everything else that we were presenting at a market, we said this isn't going to work. The customer isn't going to understand it. They are willing to pay a little bit more for it, but it still has to fit within the realm of what we're offering for the consumer that we're targeting. And to that end, we actually brought our retails down. We worked a little bit short, and we've came into the retails where we are now, which the two current models we're working with are between 95 and 125 USRP, which falls into the right range for a fashion watch in our category amongst our competition. The materials, however, are different. So there's, we get into material costs. If we get into that later on, there'll be conversations about, what the cost is for ocean plastic versus traditional plastic, where they meet up, what the customer's perception is of value. And again, this material in particular has worked very, very well because the way it integrates, the way it takes color, the way we've been able to work it into design actually elevates the look of a product. That's not always the case when using sustainable materials in a fashion item. There's a lot of vegan leathers out there that we've worked with, apple skin, pineapple skin, things like that in the past. They look great, but you can call them leather. They don't look like traditional leather. They have a different feel. They have a different look, not necessarily that elevated look. Again, comes with a higher cost. So you're targeting a customer that is willing to pay that little bit, that extra for it, and give up maybe some of the aesthetic.
I thank Rob for that answer. I mean, research is showing that about 85% of our customers are prepared to pay that little more. They are at the moment saying about 15%. They're prepared to pay 15% extra on average, but.
And I think that's probably about where we are when we brought our retails down a little bit to something traditional. So we're getting closer. We're very conscious of it. If we can't make it sell, then it kind of blows up the whole initiative, doesn't it?
Exactly. Thanks for that, Rob.
No problem.
Thanks, Tracy. I was actually going to ask you that very question, which you've just answered yourself, actually. And in your experience, are consumers willing to pay more for sustainable and ethically sourced products? But you've already said, up to 15% more. And has that changed, do you think, in the last few years? Has the amount paid up? Is the amount they're willing to pay increased, or have the amount of people you've surveyed said that a percentage of them said that they're willing to pay more?
Well, that's Charlotte. That's recent surveys. So that's results coming out, say, about 4 months ago, where they're saying 85% are looking for sustainable product, and those 85% are willing to pay up to 15% more. So. We'll look out for the updated figures in the new year and see, and I expect those numbers will shift, but see what our friends in Mindset have to say for us in the new year.
It would be interesting to throw that question to you, Zoe and Francois. Are you seeing a similar trend in shopper behavior, the interest in sustainable products and willingness to pay more yourselves? For Zoe, do you want to take that first?
I think it's a little bit varied on Buy on Board, to be honest, because obviously the range is very different than you would get in the larger retail stores. It's probably different for the different airlines as well, and depending how much we're pushing that sustainability factor. So on some of our airlines, we have pushed it quite significantly. So we've got a significant increase in those products with sustainability on. We are also highlighting it a lot more than we had before. So I would say actually one of the challenges that probably all of us have faced is actually the communication, to get the communication across that actually these products are great from a sustainability point of view and what they're doing. So that is the main area that we've been working on, is actually getting that message across to the passengers so that they can really understand what that product does to deliver from a sustainability point of view. But I'm sure as time goes on, as we get that message out and we're stronger on that, then the sales will grow exponentially, because actually we're creating the right message to deliver to the passenger, which will make sure that they purchase it, because actually they now know that it's a great product from a sustainability perspective.
Indeed, and on that whole topic of communication, we're going to come on to that in a few moments. Before we do, Francois, with your commercial partners at Abu Dhabi, what's your experience on that?
It's a slightly different for us because I think we're a bit less mature in the region. I mean, from a customer point of view, it's linked to the fact that we get very diverse customer base. We get a lot of labor or low-income customers, so I don't think the topic is really applying for them. And I think the region is starting from quite far, but it's catching up very fast. Especially with the expat community, which is quite affordable and I think more on the trends. And yes, there's a demand for this type of product. And I think the region is starting to realize that it needs to adjust to be more sustainable and for the future. And with COP coming in the UAE next year, I think it's creating a great platform. Everyone is realizing that we need to do something else.
Indeed, and your midfield terminal is obviously catering to those new consumers with its sustainability approach.
Yeah, precisely. It has been integrated in the design, so that would be great.
Okay, so shall we move on to that next topic about consumer communications now? And so we'll go back to you, Tracy. Do you want to put your question, I think you had for Rob on that one?
Yeah, so Zoe touched on the importance of communication. I mean, it's one thing having a great product with a sustainable story behind it, but it's so important for us as the retailer to be able to communicate that to our customers. So, and I did a bit of a deep dive onto Oceanworks and had a look at their website, and I noticed that the story, there's a lovely story linked to the QR code. Rob, so I just wondered, how are you displaying that QR code anywhere on your packaging, and how do you tell the story of your association with Oceanworks, and then how do we pass that story on to our consumer?
Sure. To this point, we're not using the QR code, more from space restrictions that are required. And again, as I touched on earlier, depending on how the product is merchandised across a watch category, it is one of the difficulties to tell the story after having gone through all this. There's definitely better retail areas, or areas of business, I should say, that we have a lot more latitude. In-flight, for example. In-flight is great. I love the idea of in-flight for our ocean plastic product because we are able to tell a story, even a short story around it when we're doing that. Now, again, we're kind of in our infancy on the in-flight piece of this product, and we're working on placements for 2023, but those are things that could easily be incorporated, I would say, into something like an in-flight print presentation or online. Online, again, very easy to tell the story. You have a lot of space to work with. When you're dealing with a jewelry counter, for example, where you're mixed in with other product, we really depend on whatever we can to tell the story, or the sales associate to be educated. The beauty of the product is it looks very different from everything else that's in the showcase, so it causes the ability to create questions to be asked. We do try to display it in our considerate packaging, which at least calls out the point that it isn't, that has its sustainable materials incorporated with it. As it grows and people are getting behind this subset of a category as a business within itself, for example, our product has been placed on the majority of celebrity cruise ships. There is a space for sustainability on its own. In that case, we are able to provide graphics with the Oceanworks logo, with the great visuals that go along with it to help tell the story. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done. A lot of it comes down to that collaboration with the retailer and what you're able to do from a space standpoint to tell it. Hope that kind of answers the question, but we would like to do more than we're able to do at this point. And there's some places that we're great and can do a lot, and other places that it's somewhat limited. And we certainly don't get enough credit for what components are in that product and what we've done from this position.
Yeah, I certainly think there is room for collaboration on that, Rob. I mean, we could potentially give you a dedicated unit, a dedicated area, because I think just putting a product there, and if the consumer doesn't know that it's recycled, they may skip past it, and telling the story is so important. So, we would certainly look to work with somebody like yourself so that we give you a platform to call out the story.
That would be, that's great. And I think the fact that this product resonated so well, I don't know if the other products that we've made within a sustainable range of incorporated materials have gotten enough credit. This is almost now our launch pad to broaden it and get into some other things as well, or expand some things that may not have been received as successfully. They just didn't have the opportunity to be, but with a product like this that's working so well, it showcases everything else around it much better.
Communication is key, huh?
Yes.
Thank you for that, Rob. I think, Francois, I think you had a question about the end of life cycle for Rob.
Yeah. So the product is great when you buy it. There's a great story. And I was also interested to know if you have a collection program, if a customer wants to dispose of it, and if you collect them, can you recycle many times the plastic?
Sure. That's a great question. You know, the watch category is an interesting category in and of itself. At this point, we don't have a program like that. One of the reasons is that we haven't found that there's necessarily been a need to this point. Fashion watches, like fine watches, tend to not be disposed of, even if they're on the more inexpensive side. They tend to have a sentimental value. They're held on to for a long time. They come in and out of style. Because it's considered kind of a jewelry piece, rarely is it gotten rid of. So we really do depend on the end consumer at this point. And again, it's a new collection, so we don't know what we're going to see here, but we really do depend on the end consumer at this point to decide how they're going to dispose of that product in the rare event that we think it would need to be disposed of.
Thank you, Rob.
Did we want to throw that question, I think, to Bryony and Sarah as well? Tracy, did you want to expand on the consumer communications with them?
I believe Sarah did answer that already when I was asking her the question about the stamps, and you said, no, you don't have the stamp, but you do have the QR code, and the QR code gives you the ingredients and the whole story. So that nips that one. So that and the size of the QR code is quite clearly visible on the packaging, I assume.
Yes, on the backpack. I think just to touch maybe on some of the points that Rob made, and I think we've all kind of made, is around that, how we tell the stories about what we do in a way that then is kind of compelling to consumers and allows them to make those choices based, one, on their own value set, but two, if they're weighing up a choice between, you know, their watch brands or their confectionery or biscuit brands, that we help them make that choice. Some of the other things we're doing in terms of our overall comms piece, because again, as any brand or company knows, you have communication around kind of the corporate structure and the things it does, and then you have communication around the brand and the things it does. So I think in terms of you know, what we're doing for GTR, we have the QR code, and we're doing more. Our global travel retail manager, Amy Yule, is working with a lot of her accounts and making sure that we actually try and promote that a little bit more. And the other things that we're doing is trying from a corporate perspective, whether it be on LinkedIn, but other routes to talk about. We're at the very early start of that, but really talking about our sustainability journey and the things that we're doing. So I think communication has a broad reach to it. There's that sense at the point of about to purchase, how you weigh up those pros and cons, but then equally what those messages are along the way as well.
Exactly. And again, working with someone like yourselves, you know, that QR code could then be brought onto your shelf edge labels next to your pricing. It could be on your furniture. You could be in dedicated zones. And again, as a retailer, important for us to tell your story to our consumers.
I read some research recently about how specifically the younger generations, Gen Zs and millennials, are being very discerning in terms of who they work for and what their overall CSR strategy is of the companies they're going to. And so it's increasingly more difficult to recruit people and retain a good workforce in these ages of, you know, increasing focus on sustainability and discernment among consumers in general. Francois, I think you had a question about the whole community impact of the sustainable initiatives that you wanted to put to Bryony and Sarah.
Yeah, I think that sustainability is totally part of your company DNA. It's more than just a product, which is impressive. How do you engage with staff and the local community to both strengthen your credentials and communicate to them around sustainability?
I'll touch on a few of those, and Bryony can perhaps follow up from a family perspective. It would be lovely to take you all or transport you all now, I think, to the village of Aberlour in the Highlands of Scotland. It's one that absolutely supports Walkers as a business, and we support it. So there's kind of a mutual sense of dependency. So within that, the values that we have as a company are to make sure that we support the community and the community supports us. How we engage, I suppose, on a sustainability level is that sense of making sure that where we are kind of is supported. We do our utmost to protect the environment around it, and always kind of making sure that we touched a bit of this in terms of how we communicate, but that we're sharing elements with the community and with our staff. And how we speak to our staff, again, is probably multi-faceted. We have, from a social media perspective, kind of a brand page, but then equally we have kind of a corporate and HR pages as well, which kind of speak more about the things that we are doing. We have a lot of internal engagement programs through, whether it be email, whether it be TV, whether it be kind of sharing, forums with staff about the things that we're doing, and making sure that we do kind of our best to let people know what's going on, and to make sure that we are kind of connecting with them kind of on the right level.
I think on this one, definitely as a family or as a business, we have not been very good historically about wanting to share stuff or boast about stuff. It's just we quietly get on with things and don't talk about it too much. And it's a bit of a shift for us, even getting to the point now where we're happy to come, because you sort of think there's always more you could be doing. At what point are you ready to go public and say we're doing all these things? Because you could do more, we could all do more, and it's a never ending journey. I think we all have to keep pushing, kind of thing. So I think that's also something that we're learning and evolving as we go, is how we do engage people more. I think to Michael's point, it has become more important for our staff to feel that the business is it aligns with their values and things. So I would say we do lots of the great stuff that Sarah's talking about, and we're really open to ideas and learning from what Rob might be doing, that we could engage in a different way, because I think, to your point, it's such an important one, and we probably haven't done it as much as we need to think about going forward. So still loads to learn on our end, I would say.
Good. And is it easy to align the different generations in the family around the project? I guess it's more led by the younger generation, but are you all aligned?
That's a really interesting question. I would say definitely some people engage in it more than others. I would say, like Sarah said, inherently from where we are very much we're quite a rural business. I think we generally, from an environmental perspective, we have a kind of general respect for the outdoors and nature as a kind of basis of it as a family. Very important to my dad, for example. He's very into birds and nature and all the kind of wildlife. I definitely think as a next generation, so my cousin's son, who's 5th generation, is our first 5th generation working family member. So we're starting to see that definitely become more part of the core of the agenda. I think for my generation and the next generation, it's much more about, this is an absolute must. It's part of our core values, and it has to be part of built into what we're looking, how we want to move forward. So there's definitely a push as much as a pull from the senior generation. There's a lot of pushing happening too, and I think that's exciting and really good. It's a good challenge to have, that people see that, because like you mentioned, your son Francois, it will become part of his core values and what he expects from a business that he works from, and same as we should be expecting from our family members and our staff as a whole. So yeah, a very good point.
It's a lovely point, because I think there's a sense of the generations of the family within the business. But what's really interesting from that kind of culture perspective or socioeconomic perspective is that at Walkers, we will have very kind of young workers in their teens, 16, 17, 18, right up to people actively working in the business until, I'm going to say, their 70s. So within that spectrum, you have value shifts and value changes, and I think kind of the younger generation, as I can talk from being in the middle of that spectrum, raises very different questions of a company. And whereas it may have been more around, and this still holds true, benefits, financial benefits, there's more challenges around what the company is doing. And I'm sure all of you may recognize some of that from your own circles or from the companies that you work in. So those challenges and sustainability rising up on that agenda, there's a sense of how different generations approach the same things, that respect for the land, an older generation, but equally the responsibility put on companies from younger generations. So yeah, it makes for a kind of very dynamic working environment.
Very good. Thank you.
Moving back to Rob, if we can now, Tracy, a similar topic actually. You had a question for Rob.
Yeah, so Rob, again, through your association with Ocean Works, what is the positive impact on your plastic and carbon footprint through the use of your recycled material?
So it's a little bit difficult to track in our case. Obviously, a watch is not a very big item. And when you're dealing with currently, you know, somewhere between a dozen and 2 dozen silhouettes or styles that are out there in production that just starting to gain traction, it's probably not as impactful as we would like it to be. As it expands, obviously, the positive impact grows just through the sheer use of us partnering and using more of that and expanding our product range. There's an interesting statistic that, you know, at this point over traditional plastic for the product that we've used in our ocean plastic or has been supplied by Ocean Works, we've saved in the manufacturing process. So of using ocean plastic versus traditional plastic, we've saved the energy equivalent of about 420,000 phone charges. That statistic might actually be a little bit old. I think it goes back to when we first started our partnership with them. The other thing I thought that was interesting about that number is that if you convert that into physical energy expenditure, it's the equivalent of about running on a treadmill for 2.7 years straight. So, you know, I thought that was kind of a funny way to look at it, but that's kind of what
it's a good start. It's a good start, Rob.
Yeah, as it expands, it only grows, and I guess that is the positive impact that you're asking about. So
exactly, little steps.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Rob. I mean, something that I have been talking to a lot of stakeholders about in recent months is sustainable growth of a company. So for instance, you know, all companies want to grow and expand their footprint and their sales, but you have to, if you want to do that sustainably, there's some sort of line you have to tread. So interestingly, with your business model, the more you create, actually, the more you save. So it's a interesting business model. I'd like to say at this point, thank you to everybody who's been engaging in this conversation. We have just a few more questions left before we wrap up. And I think Zoe, you've been quiet for a little while. I'd like to bring you back into the conversation. And it's again staying with Rob and perhaps next steps.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So Rob, you've been on a brilliant journey so far. What's next with regards to supporting sustainability?
So I think it's just continuing to grow it at this point. Now that we've got a successful working material like ocean plastic that is durable, that holds up well to a fashion item like a watch, I think next steps are we make many more brands than just Anne Klein. So we will start to incorporate and see how those materials can integrate into other brands that we partner with. We've already started to look into that research actually, and start to work on some design elements for some other brands. Not all are currently in travel retail, but most of our brands are global brands that we manufacture for. And then additionally, to just continue to look for those new materials that we can work and integrate in our product to figure out ways to continue on this journey and bring more sustainable materials into an item that is difficult to incorporate that into, quite honestly. But I think we're I think we've done a great job so far with what we've accomplished, and I think there's a lot more to come.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's looking awesome so far, and I look forward to seeing the new results as they come through.
Thank you.
I think that question's actually also relevant now, I guess, to throw to Sarah and Bryony, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you guys as well have been on an incredible journey over, you know, a significant number of years. Where do you see yourselves going forward with regard to supporting sustainability?
I think it's probably a never ending kind of, and that sounds like negative, but a sense of once you start on this journey, there's always improvements to be made. There's always kind of new materials to explore. I think the question from earlier from Francois that Bryony answered around quality, there is a sense of what plastics do to help retain quality, but there is a huge amount of work and research that's ongoing. We work with a number of suppliers that are looking at new materials all the time, and there's a sense of kind of trying to be on the front foot maybe of some of those breakthroughs in food packaging that will retain a freshness in the way that we would want for a global brand like this. And I think one of the learnings that we've maybe had as a company is more collaborative and joined up working, that different parts of the business come together, and that's certainly been a real learning from us. As Bryony highlighted, we started the GTR project and it was a cross-functional project team coming together to tackle problems, to try and make improvements. And I think that sort of diversity in thinking helps, you know, create better solutions to some of the problems that we have around plastics, because it can be difficult. Sustainability and the sustainability journey is not easy. I think we would all recognize that, but I think the kind of joined up thinking, the collaborative working, and then where we can make improvements, however small, the kind of incremental effect of that, one for our brand, two for how you do this in an economical way, and then three for the planet and for all of our children and grandchildren. You know, that's the aim here. So yeah, I think one, kind of more of the same, always trying to kind of move forward and not taking the foot off the gas on this.
Excellent, that's really good to hear, and I'm sure the future will be fruitful for you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. I was just going to say, before we wrap up, I just want to actually turn the tables around slightly and put that last question that Zoe you had for Rob, Sarah, and Bryony to you, Francois, and Tracy. Obviously, you're looking at different product portfolios, different ways in creating sustainable terminals with product mixes and so on as well for you, Francois. What are the next big projects, next big steps in your sustainability journeys for each of your respective companies? And since Zoe, you have the virtual floor, I'll throw that to you first.
Thank you. So with regards to Gate Retail, we're doing a significant amount on sustainability at the moment. However, what we tend to do is we tend to have our overarching Gate Retail sustainability strategy, but then we link it obviously to all of the airlines, because all of the airlines are slightly different in the way that they look at it. So we match the overall overarching strategy that we have with specific things that those specific airlines are looking for. So that might be something to do with a new product going on, it might be something to do with packaging, it might be something to do with the communications, or it might be all of those. So depending on the airline will be dependent on the direction we go in, but actually there's also that overarching strategy that comes from the centre.
And may I ask, are you seeing different levels of investment and commitment to sustainability from depending on the region the airline is from in particular?
Yeah. Yes, very much so. So the European airlines are very, very focused on it, and it's those guys that we're particularly strong with regards to a sustainability perspective. As you go a little bit further out, they're not so focused on it. They know that it's coming down the line, and we're probably a little more proactive than they are at the moment. So we're pushing them rather than the other way around.
Thanks. So, and Tracy, can I throw that to you?
So unlike Walkers, who've been on the journey for, 120 years, for us, our ESG story is a newer one. It's something we we've been on the journey really for the past 18 months. We launched our strategy 18 months ago, so it's still early stages. So we're busy weaving in sustainability into our design and implementation, closer collaboration with our airport partners, ensuring that we're aligned with their vision. And then working very closely with our suppliers, bringing them on the journey. And I'm pleased to say that a lot of our suppliers are actually ahead of us on the journey, which is good to see. For us at the moment, the big thing, the big push over the last year is obviously removing single-use plastics. That's been the biggest challenge. And there's always, we were talked about cost on the call, and there's always this push-pull on cost and the perception that sustainability is more expensive. Finding alternatives, certainly to plastic, are more expensive, which I'm sure you guys would have seen. So it's always the doing the right thing, which our customers are demanding, and then versus the cost, and it's balancing us. So it is work in progress, and bringing everybody under our umbrella, under journey. And it's definitely, as we're on this role, we're on this wheel together, and there's definitely no stopping now that we're on. But most importantly for us as well is the communicating, and it's important to be not just talking the talk, but seem to be walking the walk.
And I presume you're getting buy-in also from your airport partners, obviously from Abu Dhabi, but from the others as well.
Absolutely. Well, Abu Dhabi were the leaders, I'm proud to say, in this category. It's certainly in passing down green initiatives from a building level down to us, the retailer. And I would say Abu Dhabi has certainly set new standards, not only in the Middle East, but globally. Francois, I'm sure you can be very, very proud of those standards that you've set. And ones which we didn't quite understand when we came on the journey, but ones which we have actually woven into our own ESG strategy, because I think and I believe that there were so many valuable principles that the airport has put in place, and so important that these principles get passed down from the airport to the operator, to the suppliers, and down to every product that enters our shops and gets placed on our shelves.
Thanks, Tracy, and a nice segue there to you, Francois.
So it's very interesting that so the design of our future new building is a very sustainable and advanced. But as a company, for us, the question is very timely. We had a strategy meeting earlier in the week, and when we were discussing where we stand in terms of sustainability, we get a lot of initiatives, usually very disjointed, and we said we need to step up. We need to develop a full strategy for the business to make sure that we move in the driving seat. As part of the Abu Dhabi airport community. Locally, we are very lucky that we have the national carrier Etihad are very well advanced in sustainability. They are using a lot of biofuels and replanting trees in the mangroves. They get a lot of initiatives. That makes me very jealous, and I think we need to catch up with them, and we need to go back in the driving seat. And once we get a clear strategy, we can communicate to our partners and get everyone on board to come on the journey with us. Fully agree with Tracy. The job of an airport is to be in the driving seat and to be the pacemaker on this type of strategy and initiative.
Thanks very much, Francois. Well, before I hand over to Charlotte to wrap up this session, I'd just like to thank all of you, Zoe, Tracy, Sarah, Bryony, Francois, and Robert for taking part. It's been really interesting from all sides. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning into this. And please do, as we said right at the start, please do send us your expressions of interest to take part in a similar travel retail sustainability roundtable in the future with us at TRBusiness. Thanks to you all. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you again to our wonderful panelists. There was a few things that really struck out to me during that session. I know all of you mentioned the journey, and you're all very humble in saying that you are, nowhere near the end. And once you're on this journey, it never does finish, actually. But not to discount at all what you have already put in place. There are some really tremendous initiatives. And I wanted to pick up on something that Bryony and Sarah pointed out just very quickly. You talked about the buses for staff. getting to work, I think that's what I got from the video and what you said earlier. And you said that actually comes at a cost to you, but don't discount the enormous value that has obviously to the staff's well-being, and then obviously their morale. And I think that's something that's really important, doesn't get talked about too much, is the actual effect on the whole company and what that means to them. And then, you know, the retention that you have because of that, and the loyalty of those staff members, and the general good feeling, and then their productiveness, I guess, comes back to you. So even though obviously it's at a cost to you, it is also the right thing to do, as you pointed out, but also hopefully in time, you know, everyone will see that is an overall plus and an overall positive to the whole business. So yeah, so congratulations both to Rob and Bryony and Sarah, and thank you very much for putting your sort of heart on the line and showing everybody you know, you're able to talk about these things in detail and get them dissected with this lovely panel that's joined us here today. So once again, thank you from me, and I hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.